Jim, let's talk about a little bit about Canelo because with your experience and you covering the sport for Mexico for almost more than 5 decades, um, the Canelo for us presents a very peculiar thing because no one in boxing today divides the opinion like he does. Um, you were there for Chavez when he paralyzed a country every time he fought. Does it surprise you that Canelo, despite all his accomplishment, is more polarizing than beloved, even in Mexico?
Well, first of all, there was something about his original television contract with Televisa, I believe it was.
Mhm.
And a very great Mexican screenwriter named Guillermo Arriaga, who was working with me on a potential boxing project, explained to me that Televisa was politically unpopular. And therefore, Canelo's early fights were not watched by as many Mexicans as might have been the case if he had been on a network other than Televisa. First orientation to what was going on. Then Arriaga also explained to me, I said something about Yucatan and Guadalajara, etc. And he said, well, it's more than that. He said, remember, he is pure redhead and his first name is Saul. So what does that mean? It means way back in his roots, somewhere far before they're more identified as Mexican or whatever, there's Jewish in there. A lot of Jews came from Spain and Portugal to get away from persecution there. And when they did, some of them came to the Yucatan. He said, so Saul Canelo Alvarez with red hair, there's no question in my mind that somewhere his roots go back to that particular migration pattern. And that's not the same kind of Mexican as a dark haired, dark skinned person from Tijuana or Ciudad or even Acapulco. These are all ethnically different and spiritually different roots than the kind that Canelo has. Is he a real Mexican? Oh, hell yes, he's a real Mexican. Does he fight with Mexico in his heart? Oh, hell yes, he does. But there is a reason why some fans see him in a different way. Oh, and one more thing. Mexico, remember, he's a counterpuncher. He's not a pure attacker. He's a guy who plays off of what the man in front of him does. Does he get knockouts? Sure, because he can punch with power. But, is he in a bit of trouble if he's in against a fellow counterpuncher with skills like Dimitri Bivol? You've already seen it. Okay. And so matchmaking is a huge part of the sport. And you have to match Canelo the right way. Bivol turned out to be a negative choice, not a positive choice. He'd have been better off fighting Beterbiev. And who knows, maybe
Yeah.
he will. Maybe he thinks he can get some of the reputation, and not that he ever feels that he's slipped, but he can get some credit and some reputation back if he goes into the ring and beats Beterbiev. And that is a much better fight for Canelo because Beterbiev is a come forward destroyer.
Jim, I want to ask you one final question. Talking about Canelo, where do you rank him among the Mexican greats and Latino greats?
That's
And
another great question. All right, let me jump in here. All right, I was very ardently taught early in my career Julio Cesar Chavez, and then I spoke to more sophisticated Mexicans like Arriaga, and Salvador Sanchez, and then there were several others who got mentioned. So it's not an easy choice. There are so many great Mexican fighters. I was in Canastota last year with Barrera and Morales. You can make a certain kind of case for either of them, right? And I said to Barrera and Morales at lunch, what about Canelo? And Morales answered first. And I was surprised. He said, I believe that he can now present a resume as the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. I said, Eric, you're saying that? He said, I think it's true. If you look at how many wins he has, how many quality wins, who the two losses were to, et cetera, I think he can certainly present a case as the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. I turned to Barrera. I said, wow, what do you think of that? He said, I very strongly agree. He said, I probably feel it even more strongly than Eric, because Canelo is a technician and a brilliant technician. Okay. He's not in there winning on his physical talent, although he has that. He's winning with his brain and his trained skills and his understanding of what he can do that's better than what you can do. So if he beats Crawford, if he beats another opponent like Beterbiev, then I'm on the Eric Morales bandwagon. At that moment, I'm saying he's the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. But it's such a hard decision to make because no other country has a list of fighters like that, other than, of course, the United States. The United States still has Muhammad Ali and Joe Louis, right? You know, and
Robinson.
many others. Sugar Ray Robinson, by the way. I once asked Larry Merchant, why do you call Sugar Ray Robinson the greatest fighter of all time? Merchant looked at me with a blank expression and said, Jim, he's a natural welterweight who knocked out middleweights with one punch. It's an incomparable qualification. That was very interesting. And I saw Ray Robinson. I saw his skills. My mother said, watch him dance. And he certainly was an amazing prize fighter. But of course, those guys lived in a different world. They fought every 2 weeks. They had 15, 20 fights per year. It was an entirely different way of doing business than what we see today.